Welcome to Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. I'm your host, Jill Jardine, Master's in Counseling Psychology, longtime astrologer, psychic healer, and yogi. In this episode, my guest is Deb Piestch, a cutting-edge spiritual teacher, healer, telepathic communicator, and activator. You're going to want to hear what she has to say, so stay tuned. Welcome to the episode featuring my guest, Deb Piestch. Deb comes via the world of Hollywood as an award-winning producer, switching gears in 2010 to allow an additional calling to reveal itself as a cutting-edge spiritual teacher, healer, telepathic communicator, and activator. Awakened in 1987, Deb was open like a tin can multidimensionally. She has gone through a decade of activations, which have accelerated her abilities to traverse dimensions 24/7, communicate telepathically, as well as understand unexpected situations such as infiltration, the hijacking of humanity's Great Awakening, the energetic effects of 9/11, the reversing energies of the law of attraction, and more. Private clients and students around the world experience profound alchemical shifts as Deb brings forth detailed and confirmed telepathic communication, unique teachings, insights, experiential tools, and high-frequency light to activate their I Am presence, 13 DNA codes, third eye, and more. She masterfully clears blocks, entities, and infiltration from people's energy field, projects, and homes. Through experiential tools, she empowers people to learn how to clear their own energy fields, recalibrate, up-level, and communicate with their higher selves and beings of light guides. Additional teachings and activations include establishing and anchoring your free will, sovereignty, and new status quo of well-being. Deb says, based on the revealings of the designed assault against humanity and the hijacking of the Great Awakening, this is foundational work for everyone on the planet who desires to awaken and transcend. It's serious work, and it's not for the mamsy-pamsy. The nefarious things that have been going on across the planet just below the surface of normal reality are affecting people's daily lives in ways they have no idea about. End quote. In 2009, Deborah experienced another profound awakening with a visitation from a light being, along with a week-long ongoing telepathic communication of details that humbly blew her away. Many of the details communicated during that conversation have come to pass, as well as still unfolding. Shortly after this experience, Deborah unexpectedly went in front of the camera to start an ITV and radio show called Wake Up. Shift is Happening TV. She has interviewed many guests as well as utilized this platform for activating unified fields of light and reality for the betterment of humanity. She has developed the I Am Awakening Academy, as well as online retreats, such as Creating Your Reality, the 3-day Cocoon Retreat, and Project Leapfrog. Along with Scott Bartle, her husband and spiritual partner since 2013, both have been providing details and information about the deception matrix for many years, all of which are just beginning to be revealed in the mainstream media. Deb and Scott are wayshowers to teach people how nefarious aspects of the current reality, aka the enslavement matrix, are affecting people's daily lives. They provide the tools, teachings, and activations to shift their experiences in reality to be aligned with their clients' heart's desires and aspects such as soul, matrix, destiny. They spoke at the 2014 Conscious Life Expo together, have hosted several episodes of Wake Up, Shift is Happening TV, and were guests on Sean Stone's Buzzsaw. They also produced and hosted a panel show during the 2015 Super Bowl that was a counter protocol of light to the nefarious agenda of the halftime show. Deb and Scott have been out of the public and working behind the scenes from January 26th until now, and their new site, transcendthematrix.com, was launched in 2018 with new shows, new retreats, new tools, teachings, speaking engagements, and more. So check them out at transcendthematrix.com. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce my guest, Deb Piestch, to my listeners. Deb, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Jill.
So glad to have you on Cosmic Scene. You have a lot of information to share, and I know that one of the keynotes of what you do is, what is this great awakening? What kind of spiritual journey is it? And what is the transition that you refer to of the great awakening?
Okay, so so I've been actually talking and engaging with the knowledge of the Great Awakening for over a decade now, and what's really awesome is, and back then when it was being communicated to me, which, I'm very telepathic. I've gone through very deep alchemical transformation over, the years, and what was being communicated to me back in, a decade ago, 2011, 12 or so, is that there was going to be a first wave of energy that was going to really wake a lot of people up to the aspects of their own souls, incarnation, purpose, and intention, and also going to wake people up to the atrocities and the deceptions that have been playing out for far too long on this planet. And so that as this great awakening would be occurring, that there was going to be a lot of tests and initiations that people were going to be going through, and that was going to, how they chose to move through these tests and initiations was going to determine how they were going to either thrive or survive or not survive through this transition. Right? So the transition aspect of it is that humanity has really, not to be a victim whatsoever, but what I was being taught is that this is through telepathic communication with God and Archangel Michael and Yeshua. And what humanity has been experiencing for eons, and especially since the JFK assassination, is a stymied energy of our evolution in the collective.
Yes.
And then 9/11 was like the ritual that put it into kind of a lock grid. And what I tell people, and just on the side note of 9/11, is look back, those of us that are, in our 40s, 50s, look back at your life prior to 9/11, how much were you able to manifest, create, and be in joy versus how you're doing in the last 2 decades, right? So the transition that we're in is humanity coming into more of a conscious, objective observer of itself, individually as well as collectively, to see how are we doing, what is going on here, and it's not, and to shift the status quo, because where the trajectory that we're in right now in this transition is, we're in this spiritual war. And we've got physical and non-physical stuff to be looking at, conscious and unconscious, and the aspects of so many dimensional elements playing out, both in our individual lives as well as in the collective consciousness.
Yeah, that's all you say. I agree. And it's interesting, the turning point of 9/11. That is such an on-point comment, that look at how easy it was to manifest and flow through your life leading up to that. If you were on a path of self-actualization, especially, we were having bliss nonstop. And then,
yes.
I kind of see it, when I do my journeys and things, I see it, I see that there's almost like a grid that was put, like you called it lockdown. I totally agree with that. But it's like this almost like grid that keeps people from really getting through the astral and to the higher dimensions. They may think they are, but, unless you have that vibrational shift physically, a lot of people, it's just, it's almost like they're making up a story or something. I don't know what you would say about that. It's kind of what you were describing, that yes, the energetic is so much heavier and denser on people trying to evolve and transform.
Absolutely. And so this is, my first really quite profound awakening was 1987. And I think you mentioned off air yours, you've been on the journey for that long as well. And when you are really focused and proactively engaging with your conscious awakening journey, especially for this long, and you start to come up against walls. And this is what happened to me back in like 2008, 2009. I mean, I was having experiences where, excuse my language, I couldn't make 2 pennies to save my freaking life. And everything I was touching was turning to shit. The relationships and the challenges. And, prior to that, my 20s of working in the entertainment industry and trying to get conscious media off the ground. I mean, anything I did, I was successful for the most part. And then all of a sudden, for a couple of years leading up into like 2008, and like I said, in 2009, I was like, what in the frick is going on? And then that's when I went into a whole another level of communicating and really dissecting through the telepathic communication that I was engaging with, what is going on with me and what is going on with humanity. And then that's when I was being taught about all this demonic infiltration and the rituals and the ceremonies that people practice across the planet, and how organized they are, and how much it's affecting and manipulating our reality, and how difficult it is for us to hold our light and even activate our light bodies, because, like you said, it is a dense energy, and it is the matrix. This matrix is, construct, and until enough people can really identify this construct, and that is what's happening, especially in the last 5 years. I think there's been a huge evolution of it, but at the same time, the challenge that we're dealing with is that I'll refer to the globalists, and a lot of them are practitioners of this, the satanic practices, are interfering with our free will and God's will. And this is where we've got to become super aware of what we're dealing with in the physical and the non-physical.
So do you think, my sense is, when I've looked at this conundrum that we're in based on what's going on, is that they can manipulate only as far as the astral plane, which, let's call it the fourth dimension for a lack of a better label, that they can't really manipulate beyond that, but they can still do what, I love the word you use, lockdown on fourth and third dimension. Is that what your take on it is as well?
I would no. The what I've been shown, and I've done about, since I started doing private sessions in 2011, which was a whole soul shift in and of itself, going from being a producer in Hollywood to doing private sessions, and I've done about 1,000 of them now. So. And have been taught, the quantum and working with quantum and the holographic and all of, energy fields and higher self and all of that. When you understand universal law, the way that we are supposed to be operating on this planet is a free will zone. What has happened, though, is we have been infiltrated so deeply that it has actually overridden the free will of where we're supposed to be. And yes, we are having manipulation within the 3D. And what I have seen over and over and over the years, in the last decade, is, and it's certainly a fringe conversation. It hasn't been an easy conversation. I certainly, on my journey, never thought I'd be talking about, and now consider, my wheelhouse is really unraveling and identifying inversions and demonic infiltration, and when, people project onto you, and a lot of times people are actually we can talk about shadows too, but they're the stuff that they haven't dealt with spiritually. And because most of us know, as we awaken, we create our reality. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. But the challenge is when you have infiltration that's interfering with your 3D experience, like your bank accounts, your relationships, the projects that you are, your heart's desires coming through. when you have energies, entities, and anomalies, artificial intelligence and things that actually have breached into our dimensional reality and broken universal law, then this is where you have to unpack and dissect from a different lens and education as to what is going on. And the important thing is that you don't become a victim of it, but that you acknowledge the possibility that you actually have infiltration going on. And one of the examples I say to people, how often have you experienced the rug being pulled out from underneath you just at the point where you think, oh my gosh, I've got this. You know, my soul's path is aligned and aligning, and I've got a project that's coming online, and the right people have come into my space, and all of a sudden there's a whack-a-mole, and everything just, you know, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. Well, that is one of the examples of infiltration. And so we're in this situation where we have to actually go outside of the scope of what the normal path was supposed to be. And this is what I started being taught 10 years ago, is the normal scope of our awakening was meant to, yes, you have a dark night of the soul experience in period. But what we're dealing with is energies and entities and anomalies, as I was saying, that have breached into this reality and that are being conjured through satanic practices, rituals, and ceremony in a very, very orchestrated, organized network across the planet of people. And this is like a whole nother level of education, and we have to learn how to clear it. We have to stand in our fortitude. We've got to be the warrior of light in this spiritual war. And this is a very deep alchemical transformation that I work with people to activate and to, because I'm an activator as well, and to unpack and to actually experience a level of alchemical transformation from within. I mean, we all know it's an inside job, right? And so that is the big part of what is going on that I think a lot of people are starting to really have an inkling about. But I'll be putting a docuseries out next spring, and it's really going to identify all of this in a different way.
Yeah, I think what you're sharing here is so important because a lot of people have no awareness about infiltration. I mean, I get a sense of it. I feel like the internet is a huge tool that's used, you know, and actually any technologies probably are really easily used for that kind of thing. But I think awareness is key, and so thank you for sharing this because I'm sure a lot of people, but then there's the piece where a lot of people don't want to believe it, or they think, oh, no, that's not true. So, but the work you're doing as an activator, I think, wakes people up, right? So then they can discern truth, not from what they hear or see out there, but they get that intuition and they get that knowingness and the Kundalini activation of what is the truth and what has been fabricated for them. That sounds like that's connected to the work that you're doing.
It is, and just to clarify two things. One is, as an activator, I actually bring through a very high vibration frequency. My mouth moves really fast when I'm engaging with that energy with someone or a group of people. And what that does is it actually, everything like activate DNA, codes, reality, light, frequency, recalibrating, higher self, birthing, all sorts of different things. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you're absolutely spot on. This is, as I said, I've been dealing with this conversation since 2009. I just was never expecting that was going to be, you know, part of my journey. But it is a very challenging conversation for people to take on board. And when you do, though, the really awesome thing that I see with people, and I want to also talk about the evidence. What I always say to people is, what is the evidence and what is that showing up in your life? Are you thriving? Are you having the beautiful, awesome, expansive relationships that you intend and want? Are you having the expansiveness of abundance and of all resources, love on all resources, money, everything? If not, then we need to look at why. And that is, I think that's one of the ways that people go like, no, I'm not. And usually, oftentimes it is, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And, okay, are you open to looking at the possibility that there's other things that are going on that, well, I'll say, you haven't necessarily been taught about? So that is another key point, is for people to be able to be the conscious, objective observer of their experience of themselves, their life, and even of the people around them. And that means being in a non-judgmental, unconditional loving of self, energy, vibration, and beingness, so that you actually can be the objective observer of who you are being.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm sure people want to know the evidence of, like, how can I tell? How come they're doing this? How are they doing this? I'm sure you get that quite a bit, like people wanting to know how exactly are they being interfered or infiltrated? How is that happening? What do you say to them when they ask you that?
Well, then the conversation moves to everything is energy. And if you are not locking down your energy field, and I equate it to your home, your car. If you lived in a bad neighborhood and there was, all sorts of violence and theft, would you leave the windows unlocked and the doors unlocked at, let's just say, at night or ever? No, you wouldn't. And even here, let me just give you another example. There are so many people that refer to them as psychics. I don't. I'm a telepathic communicator. I'm backwards and forwards in, dialogue, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes people that are gifted and their gifts are active, or not even, they don't even know, they might even be receiving communication from imposter energy. That's a huge, huge thing, right?
Yeah.
But what I say to people, even the ones that are valid, if you are reading somebody, have you asked them verbally for their permission?
Right.
Do I have permission to come into your field? 9.5 times out of 10, people will say no. And I'm like, you then are doing just what other entities and energies are doing. You are invading that person's personal space and energy field. And as soon as somebody tries to do that with me, because I've become very powerful in keeping my field clear, and that's what I teach people, right? I've got experiential tools. We can talk about that later. But they will get a no trespassing sign if they try to come into my space.
Right.
And if somebody does breach it, I immediately know. Right?
Yeah. Everybody needs that kind of awareness, I think. It's funny because you keep talking about 2009. I was very aware that there was like a big burgeoning of like the fake shamans and the fake,
right.
And that right now is through the roof. If you, where you've been in this kind of work for so long, that you'll see that. And so the people don't have the discernment, like who are the true teachers, and ultimately they realize they are the true teacher for themselves. But the best healer, psychic, whoever they're consulting, is triggering them to get the answers within, and isn't taking that on or taking that away from them.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's so valid, that a lot of people aren't energetically sealed, or they don't have that level of protection of their own field. So I can see where they get infiltrated.
Have you ever wanted to study astrology? Do you know what your soul purpose is? Do you know what your gifts, talents, strengths, and weaknesses are? Do you want to find out? Everybody's talking about their chart. Now you can too. I'm offering a 6-module astrology course coming up in October 2023. You can go on my website, JillJardineAstrology.com, and register on my astrology course and join the cosmic party.
And so it's likened to you leaving the back door open in that bad neighborhood to your house because you haven't taken on the mastery of your own energy field. And then we won't even get into this right now because I definitely would like to talk about initiations. But then because so many people haven't done their spiritual work and they have their wounds and their triggers and their fears and their anger and their shadow stuff, people are walking around like a pinball machine, reacting. We have to collectively and individually do that inner work to the point where we're really able to see, oh my gosh, I just got triggered, right?
Right.
And then have the tools in that moment, or at least 15 minutes later, not a year later, go, oh wow, I really need to just process through this, just sit and be quiet for a few minutes and just go into it and just, you gain the tools, right? You've got to gain the tools of how to work through something. But then you also, when you become that sensitive, when you've been infiltrated. You'll know when you're in an argument with someone and they're projecting onto you. And, one of the new age things that people refer to is, well, I'm just a mirror for you. Well, when I started learning about the infiltration, I had to recognize, I never really resonated with that anyway, but I believe and recognize that I'm not necessarily a mirror for you. I might actually be the lightning rod that triggers your unhealed stuff. That doesn't mean I have unhealed stuff, though.
Exactly. You're a catalyst for them doing their healing work. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the reason I was bringing up initiations is what people are going through right now are a lot of tests and initiations. And I tell my clients and students, it's like, okay, you're going to get, you have signs. Are you paying attention to them? You just got a whisper from the universe. Are you paying attention to that? Then you've got the 2x2. Then you've got the 4x4. And then you've got the Mack truck. When you're in the Mack truck, you are you are probably in survival mode, and anything you do turns to shit.
Yeah, that's why people come to work with people like you and me, because they've tried everything else. But
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and there's a lot of that happening right now too. A lot of people having a hard time.
Yes, very, and I think it's going to get way more challenging as these globalists double down on this compliance and wanting to lock people down from everything from free speech to everything, banking. I mean, we have to come together in community to move through this transition of these next, I'm going to say 3 to 10 years.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that 2030 is like a big marker year, but I'm sure, I'd be interested in hearing your timeline and what you sense with what's going to play out in the next, 7 to 10 years.
Well, like I said, I think that everyone is going through test and initiation. And here's the other thing that I also just want to say about that is that if you can actually recognize something, let's say you've got a challenging situation, and if you can recognize it and go, okay, this is my initiation, and you shift your perspective on, whatever's going on, and you go, okay, this is initiation. God, show me, guide me, what is in my highest divine good? How do I move through this initiation so that I can come back out of this and be on the other side, be more insightful, have more wisdom, be stronger, have the information necessary for me to move forward in my journey, right? A lot of people don't even know what questions to ask or even really how to ask for guidance. And so going through what's important is the perspective you have on the situation that you're dealing with. If you're in Groundhog Day every day, which I know millions of people are, because that's part of the inversion of the matrix, the inversions, but lumped into Groundhog Day, then what are the questions and what are the ways that you need to engage to further unpack so your reality, you have the information, the wisdom, the insight, so you can move forward.
Do you want to speak a little bit more about what the inversion of the matrix is? That's the people taking their power, right?
Well, yes. So there's many inversions.
Okay.
Here's an example I use on a pretty regular basis. An inversion, and there's all sorts of ways things can be an inversion. But here's one of them. It is better to give than to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a second. How can we be givers if people are shamed in not receiving?
Right, which is out of balance.
Or it's out of balance. So it is not better to give than to receive. We have to close the loop. It has to be a flow, a circle.
Right. Yes.
And the other aspect of that inversion is, I've been taught through my religion or through whatever teachings, it's better to give than receive, so I can't receive. Well, what if God wants you to receive? And I believe God is an abundant giver of love and abundance of, wealth and, prosperity and relationships. Well, if you are shut down from that inversion, how are you going to receive?
Right. So inversion sounds like they come from, societal, religious conditioning, government conditioning.
All sorts of things.
Yeah, all kinds of conditioning. And then they get ingrained in people's subconscious. It's like, this is reality. And then that's what they live. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so a lot of this. So I guess what we'll talk about in this next part is like, so what's the hope for people? I mean, we know, we're aware now that all of this is going on, infiltration and initiations are happening. What is the bright light? What is the upliftment that people can look towards? Because awareness is power. And so I hear you saying that people uniting and taking back power together, it sounds like that might be the keynote of what needs to happen here.
It is a big part of it, and coming into community is a necessity as well. And I think that I refer to sometimes this Great Awakening as a big zit that the pus is being basically pushed out of. And what we're seeing is everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the glorious. And what we need to discern and decipher in our each individual journey is how we're going to move through that, and to absolutely stay focused on the ball of not only just hope. Hope is like the minimal of the light.
Right.
Stay focused on being that warrior of light. And my ministry is actually called Warrior of Light Ministries. And so what is happening with this zit that's being, exposed, the deception is being revealed, and we're seeing where the players are in politics and other arenas and of the infrastructure. The amount of deception is crazy. So what we get to do is utilize all that knowledge, come together in community, and stabilize fields of light, unified fields of light and love and gratitude, and to rise above it, but also not just in an airy-fairy woo-woo way, but actively activating and creating new infrastructure. This is not going to happen overnight. It is outside and basically laying the foundation of a parallel reality. Now, that is daunting for most people to even think or hear, but I think the silver lining here of what's happening right now, with the possibility of the designed assault against humanity and the orchestrated, like food shortages and whatnot, it is going to push people to come together and to organize. One of my mantras for the last 3 years or so has been it's time to organize, strategize, unify, organize, strategize, and execute a new game plan for humanity. And that is really what I think we're seeing a lot of people starting to do. I've been having meetings even in the last couple of weeks with people that are saying the same thing and starting to act. And that is, I think, going to be one of the most saving graces, is to come together, to support each other financially, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically, and create camaraderie with the people that you are a vibrational match. Some people refer to it as, that's my tribe. And that you step into being a solution versus a part of the problem. Because once you step into being a part of the solution, then your challenges will oftentimes not be so overwhelming.
Right. And
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, when working with unity consciousness, there's a power behind that, and you can overcome the obstacles. And a lot of people, they don't understand, like, well, what's it going to look like if we don't have the currency and we can't go? Well, currency is an agreed upon rate of exchange among a group.
That's right.
So there's that solution. And then with the food and everything, I mean, people are already all over this country, and a lot in Europe are doing the community-based farming and getting the organic and food and sharing within the community. I mean, we have farmers markets and things like that. So on a bigger scale, farmers markets. So there are the solutions are already there that people may not even be aware of, just to give an example. So there is, we shall overcome.
We absolutely shall. And, another thing is I've been saving egg cartons for the last couple of years. And, if we do actually go into a situation, this is only if we go into a situation where we're actually bartering for food and things like that, that's like a silly, simple thing to do. Save egg cartons, and then if you're going to go barter, you've got, your egg cartons, and if you're, with a community where there's chickens and goats and, that kind of thing, then you're being proactive.
Right. Wow. So this is great stuff that you shared, and I think awareness is key. I mean, being an ostrich with head in the sand, that's no way for people to be right now. So you're sharing all this very important information, and right now we're seeing what's happening, and realities can change, but it's being aware and being vigilant and working on the shadow, key energies to be dealing with right now to counteract the infiltration. Is there anything else you want to say in closing, Deb, and maybe even allow our listeners to know how they can work with you and what your offerings are?
Sure. So back in 2012, after I started doing private sessions, I was teaching people how to clear their field and the phraseology that I had been being taught. And I started producing experiential tools. They're audio. They're like guided meditation on steroids. That's me guiding you through, but also the phraseology of, let's just say, for the clearing your field, because there's all sorts of them now. There's like grounding and there's a heart chakra activation with Melchizedek, and some other ones, calling back your energy, because we also give our energy away a lot of times and don't even realize it. You're focused on this, that, then, and another, all sorts of things, but how often are you actually now retrieving and calling your energy back? That's a really important thing to be aware of. So I've got experiential tools on the website. I tell people, start with Clearing Your Field 101. There's activation energy in all of these, and you'll hear my mouth moves really fast. And when I do private sessions, I just do it over the phone and record it for two reasons. One is I don't want them to get distracted by what my mouth looks like, because there's all sorts of like sacred light language coming through, and it all, it sounds pretty weird. But the other reason for the phone and the recording is that they then use the recording as a tool, an ongoing tool for up-leveling for weeks or months.
Beautiful.
And so the website is transcendthematrix.com. I've actually restarted a show back in May that I had started in 2009 called Wake Up, Shift is Happening. Information is on the website for that. The website is we haven't touched it in years, so we've got to go back, and we're in construction with it. But the information is there. And the tools are there. And the tools are, like I said, they're experiential. And this is where you move out of just reading a book and learning, but you actually engage with the experiential experience of the energy and shifting your energy and becoming really, it's like becoming the captain of your vessel again. And oftentimes in ways people have forgotten or haven't been taught. And so that is all, there.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much, Deb, for coming on Cosmic Scene and illuminating my listeners. And we'll look forward to maybe having you and your husband, Scott, back again.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you for everything you're doing and being. And it's really a pleasure to share in this conversation and experience with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb.
Much love.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. My guest has been Deb Piestch. Make sure that you download this episode, subscribe, share, and give us a 5-star review. This is Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine signing off, sending healing vibrations through the quantum field.